Picture it, a single white crystal, catching the light, gleaming like a tiny diamond against absolute blackness. To you and me, it's just ordinary, right? It's a household staple we stir into our morning coffee without a second thought. But in this explainer, we're looking past the familiar. We're going to see how this seemingly innocent, sweet little crystal is actually a mysterious artifact, one that literally reshaped the trajectory of human civilization. Welcome. Let's step into the shadows of a very golden history.
Behind every crystal lies an empire of blood. Now, that's not an exaggeration. It's the sobering reality of what we're unpacking today. Because behind the flashy food commercials and the warm, golden tones of our favorite desserts, there's a hidden narrative. A massive, truly terrifying human cost that's kind of just been washed clean by time. To understand how we arrived at our modern obsession, we've got to look at what sugar was before it belonged to everyone.
You see, back in the 17th century, sugar wasn't food at all. It was actually a rare apothecary remedy. Imagine these dimly lit, dark wood European apothecary shops. Medieval doctors would examine these rare crystals by candlelight, prescribing them so carefully for things like fevers or digestion. Wealthy merchants traded them with the kind of reverence you'd normally reserve for precious gems. In fact, a single pound of sugar could cost the equivalent of a working man's entire monthly wage. From the very beginning, to consume sugar was to consume absolute power.
Act 1. The myth of white gold.
Let's step out of that quiet apothecary and into the grand, warm-lit halls of the elite. Historians call this the royal obsession. Picture the scene, a 16th century royal banquet hall. European nobles dripping in wealth, feasting under massive, flickering chandeliers. And right there, on the golden tables before them, these luxurious, intricate, towering sugar sculptures. Queen Elizabeth I notoriously had teeth that turned completely black from her absolute obsession with these sweets. These weren't just delicacies, they were loud declarations of dominance. Only the wealthiest could afford this exclusive luxury. It really was white gold. But to keep those banquets lavish, the supply chain had to evolve.
Act 2. Empires built on sweetness.
That insatiable demand from the royal courts triggered a massive shift. We're leaving the palace interiors behind now. What starts in the 1500s as a rare medicine transforms by the 1600s into this ultimate elite status symbol. But by the 1700s, everything accelerates. Sugar becomes a massive global commodity. It literally becomes the driving force behind the British and Dutch East India companies. We're talking massive fleets of merchant ships plunging through violent storm clouds, carrying millions of pounds of this precious cargo across dangerous oceans. The appetite for sweetness was fundamentally redrawing the borders of a new world.
And none of this was an accident. It was highly calculated. The strategy of kings unfolded in these dark, secluded royal chambers. Powerful monarchs and merchants would study massive, unfolding world maps. They were engineering glowing trade routes right across the oceans, basically turning geographic discoveries into literal blueprints for profit. With every successful voyage, the gold coins stacked higher on wooden tables, funding entire European empires. The empire was thriving, but the gold on the table required blood in the soil.
Act 3. The brutal human cost.
We have to pivot our focus now, away from the sparkling chandeliers of Europe and directly into the brutal, relentless sunlight of the Caribbean. This right here is the dark heart of our explainer. It's this stark, horrifying contrast. On one side, you have immense, glowing wealth flowing straight into European royal chambers. On the other, the exhausting, agonizing reality of the colonies. The maps might have been drawn by kings, but they were ultimately paid for by enslaved people. The scenes recorded by history are just devastating. Massive sugar plantations stretched endlessly across the Caribbean and South America. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, millions of enslaved Africans were forced to cut endless fields of sugarcane under a punishing sun. Imagine wide aerial views of industrial smoke, rising into dark skies over boiling houses and burning plantations. The sheer massive scale of the environment was matched only by the catastrophic human toll it demanded: sweat, dirt, and unspeakable cruelty. Those were the true ingredients of the era's grandest desserts.
1. Behind all those massive global trade statistics, behind the stacked gold coins and the glowing ocean routes, there was the singular, brutalized life of every individual worker, just one human being at a time. Stripped of their freedom, laboring until their last breath just to sweeten a cup of tea an ocean away.
Which leads us to a really profound, unsettling question. Has the empire of sugar ever truly fallen, or did it simply change its methods as the world modernized? To figure that out, we have to follow the thick smoke of those plantations straight into the smog of the Industrial Revolution.
Act 4. The Modern Sugar Addiction.
As history marches forward, sugar starts to trickle down from the elite right to the masses. The Industrial Revolution caused a monumental shift here. By the mid-19th century, Acts of Parliament drastically lowered sugar duties. That took the crystal out of the royal courts and pushed it straight into mass factory production. So we see the rise of this elegant Victorian tea culture. Crowded, bustling coffee houses filled with the everyday public, indulging in luxurious desserts that were suddenly affordable. Sugar was no longer just a symbol of absolute power, it was quickly becoming the highly caloric fuel of the working and middle classes.
The explosion of this global obsession was truly monumental. Think about it. What began as a mere 10% focus in ancient apothecaries and 15% in royal luxury just steadily expands. 25% of the focus then shifts to Victorian tea culture. And then comes the massive leap. A staggering 50% lands right in our modern supermarkets and fast food industry. It morphed from this rare medical spice into a daily, inescapable necessity.
The changing face of this empire is pretty stark when you lay it out. The setting moved from apothecaries to coffee houses and finally into our modern supermarket aisles. But it's the consumer target that shifted the most drastically, going from wealthy nobles to the general public and finally, today, to children and adults alike. The strategy of kings didn't disappear, folks. It was simply handed over to modern corporations. Because today, the empire surrounds us. It isn't hidden away in dark royal chambers anymore. It's loud, it's colorful, and it is brilliantly lit. It's the candy aisles, the endless rows of soft drinks, the fast food advertisements specifically engineered to target children. It's an inescapable modern addiction, beautifully packaged and deeply embedded in our everyday lives, in a way we're all the new subjects of a very ancient empire.
The empire of sugar never fell. It just changed its packaging. Honestly, if you take anything away from this explainer, let it be that. The historical merchant ships, the royal feasts, the burning plantations, the factories, and the glowing modern supermarkets, they are all part of one continuous emotional sequence. The ancient dining tables of the elite haven't vanished. They've just faded into the modern checkout lane, where supercrystals dissolve continuously into our bloodstreams.
And so we're left in the dark, watching these golden particles float by, with one final thought. We know the price paid by the medieval apothecaries. We know the horrific cost extracted from the Caribbean plantations. But as you look around your own home, at the vibrant, sweet packages lining your shelves, what is the true cost of sweetness today?